There's something that happened on April 12th, 2026, inside Goyang Stadium that I genuinely cannot stop thinking about. And I've watched the clips probably 30 times now. Not because I was looking for something new each time, but because every single time I watch it, I notice something I missed before. A shift in his weight. The way his arms trace the air before the music even tells them to. The moment where everything goes soft, and then, like a switch, everything explodes. And I keep thinking, how is a human body capable of doing this? How does someone move like that without thinking? And more importantly, how does someone move like that after 2 years away from a stage this size, on the third consecutive night of the biggest K-pop world tour in history, in front of 44,000 people? I need to talk about what Jimin did at Goyang Day 3. Because if you haven't seen it yet, nothing I say is going to fully prepare you. But let's try anyway. April 12th, 2026, Goyang Stadium. The final night of 3 consecutive sold-out shows that will go down as one of the most significant concert runs in K-pop history. Roughly 44,000 people inside. Millions more watching through the live stream. A 360-degree stage designed to look like a traditional Korean pavilion, surrounded by fire, lasers, fireworks, and an ocean of purple army bombs moving in waves across the stands. This was the production. This was the spectacle. And somewhere in the middle of all of it, at a moment when there was no choreography, no instruction, no map, ParkJimin stood on that enormous stage, completely free. And what happened next is why we're here today. Before we get into the night itself, we need to talk about who Jimin actually is as a performer. Because moments like what happened at Goyang Day 3 don't come out of nowhere. They come from years of work that nobody sees. From thousands of hours in a practice room that never made it to Instagram. From a young man who decided very early that dancing wasn't just a skill to develop, it was the language his body speaks. Before BTS, Jimin studied contemporary dance at Busan High School of Arts. And if you know anything about contemporary dance as a discipline, you know it's not about learning steps. It's about learning to understand the relationship between your body, music, emotion, and space at a level that goes way beyond choreography. It's about developing a physical intelligence that allows you to respond to sound and feeling instinctively, not because you were told to, but because your body already knows. Jimin walked into HYBE with that foundation. And everything he built on top of it over the following decade made Goyang possible. The quality that dancers and choreographers consistently point to when they talk about Jimin is what's known as strong and weak contrast, the ability to move with explosive, cutting sharpness, and then instantly melt into something fluid and almost gravity-free, sometimes within a single count of music. Most professional dancers skew toward one end of that spectrum. You have performers who are incredibly sharp and powerful, and performers who are beautifully fluid. The ones who can genuinely navigate both at full speed without making it look like work? That's a much, much smaller group. And Jimin does it while singing live, which means he's managing breath control, pitch, vocal tone, and body control simultaneously, in real time, in front of tens of thousands of people. I want you to sit with that for a second, because that level of simultaneous execution is not normal. Then came the military. 2 years plus away from a stage like this. 2 years of army watching old clips, old performances, old memories. And everyone was asking the same question. Would he come back the same? Would the body remember? Would the instinct still be there? Those aren't paranoid questions. In the world of dance, 2 years of physical absence can genuinely dull the connection between a performer and their instrument. The muscle memory softens. The stage instincts dim. The relationship between body and music that took years to build has to be rebuilt, sometimes almost from scratch. Jimin knew this. He didn't answer those questions in an interview. He answered them on stage. In Goyang. Night 3. Night 1, April 9th. BTS faced relentless rain throughout the entire show. The stage was slippery. Smoke effects failed. Parts of the choreography had to be cut for safety. Jimin went live on Weverse afterward, hands visibly trembling, talking about all the things he was disappointed with about the night. His hands weren't shaking from exhaustion alone, they were shaking from the weight of his own standards. Because Jimin doesn't measure himself against other performers. He measures himself against the best version of himself. And when that version doesn't show up, even for reasons completely outside his control, he still feels it. That live stream genuinely worried fans who watched it. But what those fans didn't know yet was that Jimin was already turning that disappointment into something else. He was storing it, converting it, turning it into fuel for what was coming. Night 2, April 11th, the weather finally cleared, and Jimin performed differently. Korean media described it as every moment like a movie. The white costume during the 2.0 stage, the blonde hair catching the wind during Fake Love, the precision and freedom that came from a stage that wasn't fighting him anymore. He told the crowd he could finally see everyone clearly, that he'd missed them more than words could say, that he was grateful for the wait. It was beautiful, but it was still a warm-up, because night 3 was when Jimin let everything go. April 12th, the show starts, and from the moment Jimin walks out, something is different. His blonde hair tied low, a look that Korean netizens immediately dubbed Northern Grand Battle. There's a charisma coming off him before he even moves that's hard to describe but impossible to miss. The way he stands, the way he looks out at the crowd, the way he breathes before the first note hits. This isn't Jimin trying to perform well. This is Jimin who already knows he's going to perform well, and who has decided to go somewhere beyond that. There's a difference between a performer who walks on stage hoping to look great, and a performer who walks on stage because they simply cannot help it. One looks like effort, the other looks like breathing. Through the structured choreography portions of a show, Jimin is devastating. Every body isolation is exactly where it needs to be. Every musical accent is caught and translated into movement with a precision that makes it look effortless, which is the most dangerous illusion in performance, because effortless is actually the hardest thing to achieve. There's intentionality behind every movement that you can feel even if you can't name it. That's what separates a technical performer from an artist, the ability to fill choreography that already exists with something new each time, something alive, something that feels like the first time even though it's been rehearsed hundreds of times. And through all of it, he's singing live, stable tone, real emotion, not surviving the choreography, and then trying to sing on top of it. Both, fully, simultaneously. But all of that is the backdrop, because the moment that everyone is still talking about, the moment that made professional dancers stop scrolling and watch in silence, happened during the free section of the show. A stretch of the performance designed to be less structured, more spontaneous, more personal. No counts, no formations, no map. And in that space, Jimin chose to dance. Not because he was asked to, not because it was in the script, but because when there's nothing telling Jimin what to do, this is what Jimin does. He dances. And that massive stadium stage, which moments before had felt enormous and grand, suddenly became his personal canvas. What makes this moment technically extraordinary isn't just the movements themselves. It's the way he fills the space. In dance, there's a concept called use of space, a performer's conscious relationship with the physical dimensions around them, moving through it with intention rather than simply occupying a spot on stage. Jimin understands this instinctively. He doesn't stand in one place and gesture. He moves through the stage, not randomly, but with a sense of direction that feels artistically chosen rather than accidental. Every positional shift feels like part of a visual sentence he's constructing in real time, even though no one wrote it in advance, including, possibly, Jimin himself. That is true improvisation, not the rehearsed kind that's been polished until it looks spontaneous, but the kind that emerges from a body so deeply familiar with music, rhythm, and dynamics that the response happens organically, not because it was thought through, but because the body already knows the answer before the question is fully asked. Professional choreographers describe this as one of the most difficult capacities to develop because it can't be directly taught. It can only be built through experience, through thousands of hours, and, most importantly, through a deep understanding of who you are as an artist. You have to know who you are when no one is telling you who to be. And on that stage in Goyang, the whole world watched who Jimin is when no one is telling him who to be. The strong, weak contrast that defines Jimin's movement vocabulary was on full display during the free dance. One moment, explosive, cutting, sharp isolations that land like punctuation marks, movement that hits the air and stops exactly where it's supposed to stop. Then, within the same breath, everything dissolves into something fluid, unhurried, almost boneless. And then the explosion again. And then the flow again. Back and forth, continuously, without ever feeling forced or planned. It's like watching a conversation between two languages happening inside the same body, the language of power and the language of softness, answering each other in real time. The audience doesn't need to know the terminology to feel it. They might not be able to explain technically what makes Jimin's movement different, but they feel it, and that's why thousands of people in that stadium, people who've been to hundreds of concerts, went quiet and just watched. The audience in Goyang that night wasn't a typical crowd. Among the 44,000 were some of the biggest names in Korean entertainment: IU, LE Seraphim, Epic High, Park Hyo-shin, Yoonha, actors MC Won and Lee Young-jae. People who have spent years in this industry. People whose bar for impressive is already set extremely high. And across the board, from floor seats to VIP, no one was looking anywhere else when Jimin moved through that free section. Within minutes of the moment happening, his name was trending globally. Not because of drama, not because of a controversy, but because tens of thousands of people had simultaneously witnessed something they already knew they wouldn't forget. One of the most shared comments from that night said simply, "Jimin was Jimin." For anyone who's been in this fandom long enough, that sentence needs no translation. Then came the run moment, an improvised version of the run choreography. Not the polished, rehearsed version, but something born from a spontaneous impulse in front of tens of thousands of people. Jimin running in front of the crowd in formations that exist nowhere in the official choreography, making eye contact, delivering energy that feels intimate despite the scale of the venue. And in the middle of it, he reproduced the dust dance, a movement that's been considered one of the most legendary moments in Jimin performance history. For longtime fans, the reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Not because it was nostalgic, but because it was Jimin saying, without words, "I remember. All of it. Every moment of this journey. I haven't forgotten any of it. And I'm still here." There's also something worth saying about the fact that all of this happened on night 3 of 3 consecutive nights. Not night 1, when energy is fresh and adrenaline is high. Not night 2, when you're finding your rhythm. Night 3, when physical accumulation is real, when every muscle has already been through 2 full stadium shows, when the temptation to operate in safe mode is at its strongest. Most performers, by night 3, are managing. They're doing what needs to be done, conserving energy, staying within the lines. Jimin did the opposite. Night 3 was his most free, most uninhibited, most fearless performance of the 3. As if the first 2 nights were the process of arriving, and night 3 was the moment he was fully, completely present. Nothing held back, no distance between him and the crowd, no armor. And before the show ended, Jimin spoke to the audience. Simply, he said he would keep learning, keep working hard, keep trying to become a better person. Words that could sound like a formality from anyone else. From Jimin, after everything we just watched, they sounded like a promise. Not a PR promise, a real one. Born from the same place as a free dance, from somewhere honest inside him that doesn't know how to be anything else. He finished with, "Thank you so much. I love you so much." And the stadium answered him back. There's a lot of ways to measure a performer's impact. Chart positions, streaming numbers, ticket sales, all of those are real and they matter. But there's one measurement that can't be bought or manufactured, the moment when someone who has seen everything in this industry, someone who doesn't impress easily, stands up from their seat because they simply cannot stay seated while watching what they're watching. That happened at Goyang Day 3. Not because Jimin was trying to prove something, but because for one stretch of time on that enormous stage, he wasn't trying anything at all. He was just there, just moving, just being himself. And it turned out that just being himself was more than enough to make an entire stadium hold its breath. Let's also talk about what this moment means in a broader context, because I think it's easy to get caught up in the immediate emotional reaction and miss the larger picture of what Jimin demonstrated at Goyang. We're in 2026. BTS just came back from military service. The world had been watching and waiting, and the question hanging over everything wasn't just, will they be good? It was, will they still matter? Because the music industry moves fast. Trends shift. The artists who defined a moment can return to find that the moment has moved on without them. BTS chose to answer that question not by chasing what's current, but by going deeper into who they actually are. The Arirang album is rooted in Korean identity, Korean culture, Korean history. And Jimin's approach to performance has always had that same quality, deeply personal, deeply rooted. Not performing for an outside gaze, but performing from the inside out. The free dance at Goyang wasn't a trend. It wasn't a viral stunt. It was just Jimin, at his most essential, doing what he's always done when the structure falls away, expressing something that has no other outlet. There's something I also want to say about the fans who were there that night, and I don't mean this in a sentimental way. I mean it as a genuine observation about what made the performance possible. The energy exchange between Jimin and an audience is something that longtime fans describe as genuinely different from what you experience at other concerts. It's not just the usual performer-audience dynamic where someone on stage gives and the crowd receives. With Jimin, it feels reciprocal in a way that's hard to explain unless you've been in the room. He reads the crowd, responds to it, adjusts to it, and the crowd, sensing that they're actually being seen and not just entertained, gives back in kind. What that creates is a feedback loop of energy that keeps escalating, keeps deepening, keeps building into something that neither side could have created alone. The 44,000 people at Goyang Day 3 weren't just witnesses to Jimin's performance. They were, in some real way, part of it. And I think Jimin knows that. I think that's why the free dance happened at all, because the room gave him something that night that made him feel completely safe to be completely free. One more thing worth saying before we wrap up. After the show, Jimin's name trended for 3 consecutive days across multiple platforms. Not just in Korea, globally. And if you scroll through the comments and the reactions and the posts from people who watched that night, fans, casual observers, people who'd never paid particular attention to Jimin specifically, you find the same words coming up again and again. Real, genuine, artist presence. Not amazing dancer. Not great performer. Those phrases are there too, but they're not the ones that repeat the most. The ones that repeat the most are the ones about authenticity, about feeling like what you were watching was real. And that, maybe, is the most important thing Goyang Day 3 proved about ParkJimin. Not that his technique is exceptional, not that his body control is in a class of its own, but that all of it comes from somewhere real. That behind every movement, behind every choice, behind every second of that free dance, there is a person who means every single bit of it. And in a world where performance is increasingly polished, increasingly calculated, increasingly engineered for maximum impact, a person who genuinely means it is the rarest thing of all. If you haven't watched the free dance clip from Goyang Day 3 yet, go find it right now. Not because it's trending, not because everyone is talking about it, but because there are things in life you have to witness yourself to actually believe. Things that can't be communicated through description, no matter how long the description is. Watch just 60 seconds of that clip, and then you'll understand why 44,000 people inside that stadium and millions watching from home couldn't move. If you felt something watching this video, hit that subscribe button, leave a like, and drop a comment below telling me which Jimin moment from the 3 Goyang nights hit you the hardest. And if you have a friend who still somehow hasn't discovered what Jimin is capable of on a stage, tag them right now. Because moments like this are too good to keep to yourself. I'll see you in the next one.